Bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Good morning. The American novelist Nathaniel Hawthorne wrote, "Moonlight is sculpture, sunlight is painting." Therefore, prepare your paintbrushes for this week as wall-to-wall sunshine is predicted across the country. I welcome you on this sunny day to Sunday with Michael Portillo for 2 hours of arts, culture, current affairs and theatre. Should Britain, which voted to leave the European Union, initiate a new scheme which would allow those under 30 to travel freely between the EU and Britain and to find work? My panel will discuss the politics of resetting our relations with the European Union. It was revealed yesterday that the Home Office is offering private landlords 5 years of guaranteed full rent to house asylum seekers. Director of Migration Watch, Alp Mehmet, will join me, and we also reflect on the sharp decline in Denmark's asylum applications. In what's being hailed as a rare find, a letter written by the creator of Dracula, Bram Stoker, has come to light. The rare books expert Oliver Bayliss, who discovered it, will join me. And gear up, old sports. Stefan Kyriazis will make a theatrical return to the programme to share his thoughts on the musical version of The Great Gatsby that opened in London's West End this week. But first, your latest news headlines with Sam Francis.
Michael, thank you, and a very good morning to you. Just after 11 o'clock, we start in Vancouver, where several people have been killed and a number of others injured in what officials say was a senseless attack at a street festival there. Witnesses describe seeing a black SUV driving straight through the crowd, leaving bodies scattered, they say, along the road. The driver, believed to be a 30-year-old man, is in custody and is known to police. Officers say it's not being treated as terrorism, but a major investigation is now underway. The Canadian Prime Minister, Mark Carney, says he's devastated and shocked by the horrific incident. In Leeds, counter-terror police are investigating a dramatic armed attack after 2 women were injured in a crossbow and firearm attack. It happened in broad daylight on Otley Road during the busy Otley Run pub crawl. Police found a 38-year-old man with self-inflicted wounds and arrested him at the scene. All 3 were taken to hospital with injuries not thought to be life-threatening. Both weapons were recovered, with officers now trying to uncover a motive. The Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, has called it a serious, violent incident and praised the swift response of emergency services. The government says there'll be no toilet police following a landmark court ruling that defines woman as a biological female. Cabinet Office Minister Pat McFadden says ministers will follow the guidance, meaning people should use facilities matching their birth sex. But he insists no one will be enforcing it at bathroom doors. It comes as Kemi Badenoch says transitioning should be a clear, medically supervised process, not based on self-identification. She again called for an apology to Rosie Duffield, who quit Labour over women's rights. A single white rose and the name Franciscus mark the tomb of Pope Francis as new images today show his final resting place beneath marble arches in Rome. He was buried at his favourite church, not the Vatican, in a private ceremony after yesterday's funeral, honouring his personal wish to rest in the basilica he visited often. Mourners have been queuing from dawn to pay their respects to the 88-year-old, remembered for urging the world to build bridges, not walls. But attention now turns to his successor, with the largest conclave in modern history expected to begin early next month. Sleepless and stressed? Well, 1 in 3 people in the UK say money worries keep them awake at night. Nearly half of us are getting less than 6 hours sleep, and when we're tired, the spending starts on food, clothes, tech and even holidays. 1 in 5 admit to impulse buys when sleep deprived, with some checking their bank balance or credit score in the dead of night. Over 1 million Credit Karma users logged in between midnight and 6 a.m. in just the past 6 months. They say when you're tired, it's easy to let your spending slip, and are urging people to set limits and steer clear of late-night money apps. And London could claim today the largest marathon ever in the world, as over 56,000 runners take on the 26.2-mile challenge. Among them, celebrities, MPs and a duo dressed as a slinky dog, and 103 record breakers chasing titles like fastest crustacean and most pants warm. I don't have a clue what that is. 18-year-old Lucy Jones will be the youngest to cross the start line, while 2 runners in their 80s have flown all the way from the US to take part. Emmerdale's Tony Uddenshaw says it just felt right for him to run today in memory of his late wife on what would have been their wedding anniversary. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll learn how to pronounce a few words properly for the next one. See you soon.
Thank you very much indeed, Sam Francis. The government wishes to reset our relationship with the European Union. As a part of that, there's a proposal for a new scheme for young people between the ages of 18 and 30 to travel freely between Britain and the EU and to take jobs. Britain voted to leave the European Union, and that was supposed to be the end of free movement of peoples. On the other hand, it's said that many young British people feel disadvantaged since losing the right to settle in the European Union. And it's also argued that short-term residency by young EU citizens in Britain is incidental to this country's main problems with immigration, which are excessive numbers of legal and illegal entrants who settle permanently. What does my panel think of the principle here and of the political impact that such new rights might have? Joining me now are journalist Nicky Hodgson, former Conservative Minister Tom Pursglove and writer and broadcaster Candice Holdsworth. Welcome to you all.
Morning.
Nicky, what do you think? I mean, is there much to concern us here? A few young people going backwards and forwards and settling perhaps for a year?
Well, I felt very sad about the fact that Brexit ended that free movement, because I was one of those young people once upon a time that benefited hugely from travelling and working in different countries in Europe. I speak OK Greek because I worked and lived in Cyprus, terrible Italian because I went to a circus camp and volunteered in Italy. And more than that, it was about the experiences and the ability to learn from other people that you had not met before, interact with the other cultures, that brought so much for me. I have a 2-year-old daughter. It really pains me that she might not have those same opportunities. And in fact, we actually have Irish ancestry, and I'm trying to figure out a way to get her a passport so that she has them whether this happens or not. Because the other thing to say is that for our economy, for Britain, if our young people go to other countries where they're learning enhanced skills, for example, Spain, solar panels is a big thing there, Germany and technical skills, and they bring those skills back to us, isn't that to benefit Britain anyway?
You weren't intending to settle permanently in Greece or anywhere else?
No. Of course not. And I just was going for the experience and to have a good time and to learn some new skills, which I did. And that's really what we're talking about here. We're talking about young people having experiences and then coming back to Britain.
Tom, what's your reaction?
Well, I agree with a lot of that, and during my time as the Legal Migration Minister, we had 13 youth mobility arrangements with countries around the world, including Canada and Australia and New Zealand, and we enhanced a few of those when I was in office. I think they're a good thing. I think it's good for people to have a positive experience of the United Kingdom and to be lifelong ambassadors for business here and communities here and for our society as a whole.
Then why was it so important to end the free movement of peoples?
Well, I think the overall free movement principle wasn't right or fair, and as a leaver in the referendum, I very strongly made the case that actually we should have a equitable immigration system, one where people were treated the same regardless of where they came from in the world, and I think that that is right. But this also has to be seen, I think, through the prism of...
Do you mean you would extend this scheme for the whole world?
No. What I mean by that is that I didn't like the differentiation between people who came from the European Union versus individuals who came from around the world, and the kind of different approach to that there was prior to Brexit. I think it's one of the upsides of Brexit that we now have those levers to be able to ensure not only proper control but also a fairness to people coming from around the world based on their skills and talents and our requirements as a society. But YMS schemes are a good thing. I personally think that we ought to be negotiating these on a bilateral basis with individual member states. That is the approach that we took when we were in government. That was the offer that we made, rather than an EU-wide offer as a whole. You do need to see the structure of what this comes alongside. I doubt that this will be a YMS scheme of itself just with the European Union. There will other elements to the deal, so we'll see where we get to on this.
Candice, what do you make of it? And in particular, do you think that those people who voted Leave, who are a majority, will they be worried about this? Will they be twitchy about it?
Yeah, so in answer to your first question, I'm torn on it because, I mean, I come from quite an international family myself. My parents were British expats who lived abroad for 11 years. As a child, I was exposed to lots of different cultures. It's a really good thing. It's amazing for people. It develops them in ways that, you just can't get if you don't do it. The second part of your question, I think there's a bit of a generational divide. I think older people, certainly, they voted for that, but then younger people coming up are like, no, actually, as much as that made sense to you when you voted for Brexit at that time, for me, I want the experience of being able to travel abroad. The downside, of course, is that, we've still got a big housing problem in this country. I mean, stats came out the other day that I think it's only 23 out of the 30 London boroughs are building houses at all. Sometimes there's zero house building going on. Rents and mortgages are very high, and younger people in particular are struggling with that. And if it is, as with past migration patterns, huge numbers of people come to London, which is, of course, understandable. It's one of the world's major cities. That's going to put more pressure. So, I completely agree with it on a cultural level, but I think that, of course, are always practical things to consider.
Nikki, is this politically a Trojan horse? In other words, this is the government really bit by bit trying to get us back towards the European Union?
Well, that depends how much you know about what's going on in Keir Starmer's mind and long-term game plan. I don't know about that. I can't possibly answer that question. And but what I can answer is that we have lost a great deal, I believe, in curtailing this exchange between European young people and our young people. I'm married to an immigrant from Bangladesh. My family are immigrants. They've been hugely successful in this country. They've paid their tax, they've grown businesses, etc., etc. All I ever see is the positive side of immigration in my family. Now, I completely understand all the problems that we've got culturally going on and in terms of housing and all the rest of it, but I don't have the anxiety that everybody else seems to, and I don't think we need to be so anxious. We need to look at the opportunity that immigrants bring.
I think a lot of viewers might say, well, Nikki's all right because, it's not happening in her part of the world.
But of course it is. I live in London. I live in London.
I think, Michael, that speaks to the wider challenge of arguing the case for schemes like this, is that public patience around borders and migration is really being strained. The channel crossing numbers being up so dramatically, the legal migration numbers we've seen in recent years, I think is really straining at the edges when it comes to public tolerance for schemes like this. It's why I would argue that the bilateral approach to trying to land deals is the right one. Because if people overstay these visas, it's easier to be able to curtail an agreement if you've got one with one individual member state rather than with the bloc as a whole.
What would your answer be to my Trojan horse question? Are you worried that the government is bit by bit putting us back into the European Union?
I think that's why I make the point about wanting to see this within the context of the wider deal that the government is trying to land. Clearly, they're looking at the trade side of this as well, so you need to take a bit of a balanced look at this, looking at all the different aspects of the agreement. As I say, I don't think an EU-wide approach to youth mobility is the right answer. I think it's better to do those bilateral deals, which, by the way, the EU have with other third countries. They wouldn't take that approach with us, but it would give us greater control over the numbers. And if there were abuses of those visas and people overstaying, it would give us greater levers to be able to deal with that, which I think would give the public greater confidence.
Candice, some people would be quite surprised that at a time when it might be expected that we'd be talking about how we can limit immigration, how we can deal with the illegal immigrants coming on the boats question, that actually what the government is doing is finding a new way of having people come from abroad to settle in this country, albeit for only a year.
Yes, it feels very out of step with the times because it's not just here, it's America, it's all over Europe. People are tightening borders up and the conversation around immigration has become a lot more conservative. But I think the Labour Party, they're looking towards the future and possibly towards their voting bloc. And they know that they're popular with younger voters and this is something that younger voters might like.
Nikki, we were just beginning your point, time came in, but this is GB News, and there are a lot of people out there watching who say this is the way immigration discussions normally go. Someone comes on television and says, well, it's great for my kids and I married an immigrant and everything else, showing really quite a disregard for the social problems that are being created around housing, around schooling, around health services.
Well, it's not, no.
Are you part of that?
No, of course.
Metropolitan Metropolitan
No, I'm from West Yorkshire. I'm definitely not from the Metropolitan Elite. I'm from Wakefield, a place that had lots of immigration and lots of immigration problems, actually, as a result of people moving in too quickly and, you know, not being settled properly and not enough money being given to the local council. What I'm trying to say is, with this particular policy, the focus is really about our young people, what our young people and Britain will gain. It's not about letting in immigrants by the back door. It's not about that. It's about what our young people will gain to enhance Britain's economy and their own skills. That's what it's about. And we need to focus on that.
Tom, what do you think should be the position of the Conservative Party? Should it be nuanced or should it be outright opposition to this change?
So I think we should continue to take the position that I set out earlier, which was our stance in government around bilateral deals with EU member states individually. But I also think we've got to continue to hold the government to account around the migration picture as a whole. The fact that those crossing numbers are up by 30% is terrible. The week before last, 2,000 people arrived in small boats. And we also took forward that huge package of measures that was bringing net migration down, but we need to go further on that. So that's where we should be focusing our energies.
Thank you, panel. I'm just going to interrupt you there. Breaking news from Vancouver, where 9 people have been killed after a driver ploughed into a street festival. Let's get an update on the situation with our Home and Security editor, Mark White. What is the latest, Mark?
Well, that grim news coming from the police in Vancouver confirming what we suspected would be the case, a very significant number of people who died as a result of this SUV, this sports utility vehicle, being driven at speed down this main street where this Lapu Lapu festival was taking place in Vancouver, a festival that is an annual affair that celebrates the Filipino culture in Vancouver, and the police there now confirming that 9 people have died and of course many others injured. We saw some images that are just too graphic to show you, but they do show very significant numbers of people just lying on the street after this SUV had run through that area, scattered, and many people either severely injured or fatally injured. We can bring you a clip, I think, of audio, video that was shot by one of the festival goers in the aftermath of this attack when she is calling, pleading with paramedics to help the injured.
There's a baby over there. Baby over under the truck.
And it really was just the most awful scene, as I said, with many people very, very severely hurt. A 30-year-old man, we're told by the authorities, was arrested. He's described as someone who lives in Vancouver. Local media reports said he was an Asian male. We can also bring you another clip, quite harrowing really, from a local councillor, Pete Fry, who was at the event earlier, rushed back and just understandably so emotional at what he'd seen.
I was here earlier. This was a fantastic day here in South Hill. Lapu Day Festival was amazing and everybody's having such a great time. And so I heard the news and came here. I'm pretty choked up. I don't even know what to say. This was a great day. Wonderful event. Huge community event. And to have it end in tragedy like this, it won't break us or the community, but it's horrible.
Now, at this stage, police in Vancouver say they don't believe that this was motivated by terrorism, but clearly with all the evidence that there is here, it points to this being a deliberate ramming attack. And sadly, these vehicle-borne attacks are all too common, and the outcome is always absolutely horrific in terms of the casualties that they leave behind.
Thank you very much, Mark White. Terrible news from Vancouver. We'll bring you updates on that incident throughout the day on GB News. Thank you very much to my panel, Tom Pursglove, Candice Holsworth, Nikki Hodgson. They'll return at noon to discuss Ukraine, specifically whether Britain should resist President Trump if he imposes a peace which appears to us to be unjust. Coming up, it was revealed yesterday that the Home Office is offering private landlords 5-year guaranteed full rent deals to house asylum seekers. The director of Migration Watch, Alp Mehmet, will reflect with me on that. This is Sunday with Michael Portillo, only on GB News.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dordme, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. The Home Office is offering private landlords 5 years of guaranteed full rent to house asylum seekers. The contractor Serco is reportedly looking for property owners, investors and agents with properties in the northwest and the Midlands and the east of England. Last year in the United Kingdom, 84,200 applications for asylum were made, which related to 108,100 individuals, the highest annual number of applications and applicants ever recorded. I wonder, should we be emulating Denmark, whose supposedly zero refugee policy has cut the asylum figures? Joining me now is the Director of Migration Watch, Alp Mehmet. Alp, it's very, very good to see you.
Good morning.
Indeed. Is there any novelty in being offered 5-year deals? At the very least, it suggests that the government is not optimistic about getting on top of the illegal migration problem.
That's more important, I think. Serco, a number of other companies have been involved in providing accommodation for years, frankly, and done very nicely out of it. So, you know, why wouldn't they? But it's more the fact that there's greater pressure on housing, there's greater pressure, the unfairness of it all, that there are people who are waiting for homes, really, and have been waiting a long time, and yet here we have people arriving in the country and then within a short time being provided with housing. It's that aspect of it that I care more about, and it's the way that it serves to attract people, to make us more attractive. There's nothing about refusing illegal migrants. There's nothing about holding on to them, removing them. It's all about how to make my life more comfortable for them. Of course they're going to continue coming. As we've seen, there's no question that the government is failing to tackle the gangs, and it's going to continue failing tackling the gangs. More and more people are going to come. We're already at record levels. We're going to have record numbers by the end of the year, and I'm afraid that the government is struggling to know what to do about it. That's the truth of it.
I suspect that every target has its perverse outcome. And so if you target the hotel bill, if you say we're spending far too much money on hotel bills and it's cheaper to put people into houses, well, yes, that may well be the case, so they may reduce the budget. But actually the impact upon the population will be greater if people move out of hotels and into houses.
Absolutely. It's shifting, really, the responsibility for housing migrants to the local authorities. The local authorities are struggling to meet the demands that are now being shunted onto them. The Home Office, it's all very well to say, oh, there are fewer hotels. Note, however, that they're not actually saying there are fewer people in hotels. There are fewer hotels.
Yes.
They're in fact...
and I think the money they're spending on hotels is going down, isn't it?
It is going down, so they say. I'd like to see the final figures.
I mean, obviously, it's much cheaper to put someone per night into a house where you pay a 5-year rent than it is to put them into a hotel. Can I just ask you something about Denmark? I'll tell you what struck me about Denmark. However successful their policies are being, they have a left-of-centre government at the moment. They seem to have pretty much a political consensus. A minister was quoted as saying, I'm left-of-centre, therefore, of course, I'm concerned about immigration, because immigration affects working-class people, ordinary people, the people that I represent. The middle classes and the upper classes are largely immune to the impact of immigration. I thought that was such an interesting comment.
Well, it's something that Nigel Farage has noted, of course. And there are parts of the Conservative Party that are now saying, yes, of course, we've got to do something about it because of the impact on those at the lower end of the earnings scale, on those whose circumstances are rather more difficult than most, and certainly the people who are running our government at the moment, who have lost sight of the fact of what the impact of out-of-control, not only illegal migration, but legal migration too. The numbers that are being added to the population with regards to illegal migrants making their way, and they are illegal, they're jumping into dinghies, making their way here. That's illegal, whichever way you look at it. The fact with them is that we don't always know who we're letting in, and there are so many people who, frankly, are not here because of a need, because of what's happening in their land. They would just want a better life. They want a job. They want to get on and enjoy what Westerners enjoy. They're not refugees in the strict sense of the word.
I think the GB News viewer might ask, how can they claim asylum when they've come from a safe country, France? That would be the first question. And secondly, if they are illegal migrants, why are they not arrested for the illegality of their act? What are the answers to those two questions?
The answers to that is that the government won't do it. They both perfectly reasonable. They can be arrested. They are illegal. They should be detained and removed, either removed to their countries of origin or whence they came. France won't take them. But the fact is, you say they've come from a safe country. They've actually gone through several safe countries, if not more than that, in order to get here. And that's where I think that the EU is, to a certain extent, responsible, and France is unwise not to take them back. If we were able to detain and remove immediately, they would stop congregating in the northwestern shores of France, and they would stop making their way into France in order to make their way here.
Under this government, whatever else you may say, the hotel bill is down and the number of removals is up. Is that true?
Removals up, going back to the sort of numbers that we had a few years ago, but then what sort of removals? How many of those crossing the Channel have actually been removed? We're not being... A lot of those being removed are voluntary, frankly. There were 600 Brazilians that were removed last year that were given £3,000 per head, including babies, in order to get back to Brazil for Christmas, no doubt. I just don't believe at the moment that they are actually removing people that they should be removing.
Oh, Mehmet, thank you very much for being with me today on GB News on a Sunday morning. Very kind. Moving on, it feels like summer is finally on the way. And imagine where you could be going this summer if you won our biggest ever Great British Giveaway. This is your chance to win a 4-berth motorhome worth over £67,000 and tax-free cash of £5,000. It's a prize package that's worth over £72,000. It could be yours. Here are the details.
Courtesy of Marquis Leisure, you could be driving away with this brand new Elnag Baron 560 motorhome. It comfortably sleeps 4, comes with sky roof, integrated kitchen and bathroom, and is worth over £67,000. And that's not all, as we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that wherever this motorhome takes you, it takes you there in style. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Coming up, Dracula. A letter written by the author Bram Stoker has been unearthed In what's being hailed as a rare find, the man who discovered it, Oliver Bayliss, joins me next. This is Sunday with Michael Portillo, only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are we witnessing a crisis in motherhood and in parenting more generally? From American singer Chappelle Roan making the headlines for saying that none of her friends with children are happy, to this piece from The Telegraph where an anonymous woman admits to regretting having children. There does seem to be a current trend of talking parenthood down.
Joining us now is the Professor of Family and Parenting Research at the University of Kent, Ellie Lee. Ellie, how much of this is due to cultural factors, and is it just really about the bottom line costs of parenting?
No, I don't think it is just about costs. Mothers particularly, but I also think men as well, are finding it harder to see how you give meaning to this experience. The Telegraph article I thought was very interesting. I mean, there's some points raised in it about the ambivalence of motherhood.
What really struck me about this piece in The Telegraph was where the lady says she had this difficult labour, 47-hour labour, and then all she could think of afterwards was, can someone please take the baby away so I can sleep, until it dawned on me that I was responsible and I had to get up. And isn't this the heart of the problem, that in times gone by, extended family and friends surrounded a woman after she'd given birth, taking all the other responsibilities of life off her so that she could focus on her physical recovery and on looking after the baby. And that was normal for thousands and thousands of years. And now just suddenly we expect a woman who's just gone through a really biologically difficult process to just get up and do it all and carry on.
I think that's very true. I mean, that whole narrative is extremely lonely. And what you get a sense of when you read it is that she feels very isolated, and there's not much around her, which is helping with this. And it's a really pat phrase, it takes a village, but it does take a village.
The People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. That's State of the Nation every Monday and Tuesday at 8 o'clock, only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. A letter written by Bram Stoker has come to light. Oliver Bayliss discovered it in a private collection. In the letter, Stoker writes to a friend weeks after the publication of his 1897 Gothic novel, Dracula. Experts say that letters written by Stoker are rare, and those that mention Dracula even more so. With me now is the man who unearthed the letter, rare books dealer Oliver Bayliss. Very exciting. Congratulations to you.
Thank you very much.
What do we learn in the letter that Stoker thought about Dracula?
So the letter was sent 6 weeks after Dracula's publication in July 1897. So at this point, it's not, Dracula that we know of now, this sort of almost cultural myth. It's a new and uncertain work which had been reviewed incredibly mixed. Some said it was amazing, some said it was weird and quite strange. In the letter, Stoker sent out a number of first editions to friends, and one actually went to Prime Minister Gladstone as well, basically asking for praise and also asking, here is a signed first edition for you, please let me know what you think of it. Most are very formal. They would just be like, enclosed as first edition. With this one, it is to an unidentified Williams, we believe a sort of a friend from the theatre circle, but still yet to be identified, in which he encloses the book, signs the book to him, states, house enclosed for high, which is a very informal way of saying house enclosed for kind of, this is high watermark, it's amazing writing. and then, Lord forgive me, I am quite shameless, which is...
How do you interpret that?
There are two interpretations. One is he's shameless for asking a friend his thoughts, which I don't believe. The other is, Lord forgive me, I'm quite shameless. You know, Dracula was a weird, very strange book, and still is to this day. And I think it was Stoker, in a very cheeky and quite conversational way, being like, to whoever, you know, he wrote My Dear William, so a very close friend, clearly. You know, Lord forgive me, I'm quite shameless for publishing Dracula, which I think is... You know, most Stoker letters are very formal, and we rarely see much of Stoker's personality. I think kind of to know that he was potentially quite cheeky and quite funny, for me, adores Stoker and Dracula, is a lovely touch, I think, yeah.
While you were talking, for those watching on television, we saw the letter. One of the things that strikes me is that the handwriting is extremely legible. Very straightforward.
It actually, I think in the picture, it looks a little bit more legible. Stoker's handwriting is the worst handwriting I've ever encountered.
No.
You can find online the original pictures, the original manuscript, which was originally called The Undead. It is, if you were the publisher trying to go through that, it is completely illegible. In the letter, though, when I received it, there's one word, which is...
You've puzzled over it.
Yeah, so it's Lord forgive me, I'm quite shameless. I think right before it, I believe is a squiggle. Someone else believes it is I'm now quite shameless, which is a small little aside, but I spent ages being like, what is he trying to write here?
I'm looking at it now, and I think it says I'm now quite shameless.
Yes,
But anyway... Now, I was quite intrigued to learn this morning, preparing to talk to you, that it took some while then for the book to be a success. When did it become a success?
It wasn't an overnight success at all. So it was published May 1897, and as said, the reviews were incredibly mixed. It was, for some, a very weird, very strange book. It was quite, not hugely popular, but it's sort of, you know, I think the wheels started turning. There was later impressions published quite quickly afterwards, but in his lifetime, it wasn't a major book. It was, you know, it sold quite well. The first edition did eventually sell out, but it wasn't, you know, if we think about it now, Dracula is a cultural phenomenon. It's the idea that Dracula didn't exist at some point is quite strange.
When did Stoker die?
Good question. I actually don't know that.
But you said it was really after his death.
It was, it was always picking up momentum. But I think within his lifetime, it's also the reason why Stoker letters that do mention Dracula are rare. Is very shortly after, you know, Dracula's published, he sends copies to friends, you know, he will write, please find Dracula, this is for a friend. After about a year or 2 years, there are no Dracula letters known. He then moved on to other books, and obviously none of the rest of the books were particularly well received.
I'm intrigued that he went to Whitby. I believe that in making a programme, I went to his
that's incredible.
Hotel room.
That's so cool.
And I sat in his hotel room and looked out at Whitby.
God, that's incredible. That's very cool.
I must say, I enjoyed doing it because, of course, you had this absolutely brilliant setting there. So those who don't know, Dracula arrives at Whitby, doesn't he?
Yes,
from Transylvania with, I think, is it 50 coffins of Transylvania
It's a brilliant scene. It's kind of, that's incredible, actually, to be able to be there and kind of where Stoker wrote it. But yeah, with the letter, it is, to actually have Stoker writing Dracula is shockingly rare. And Stoker, in his lifetime, you know, he was working for Lyceum Theatre and worked in the theatre world. So most friends that receive letters, this isn't Oscar Wilde writing to you, it's not Ernest Hemingway, it's Stoker, your friend Stoker. It's sort of...
He worked on the Telegraph, I think.
Yes, but it's sort of... It's like receiving a WhatsApp from a friend, you know, you're never going to think about it ever again. So 90% of letters were thrown away. Letters in which he wrote talking about the theatre, they do exist, they don't really sell for a huge amount, but to have a Dracula letter is shockingly rare, and to see in Stoker's hand Dracula is, yes.
Is this letter going to remain in Britain?
It does remain in Britain. So shortly after I launched it last week, a very famous university here in the UK contacted me, and it's now sold to them, which, for me, I sell quite often to institutions, and I love the idea of especially this letter being such a star item. It's, one, being brought back to the UK, where it was written, but now it remains in the UK, which is incredible.
Well, congratulations all round.
Thank you very much.
I must say I'm very pleased that it's going to remain in the United Kingdom.
Absolutely.
And one day we'll find out what the university is, and students will be most interested in that. Oliver Bayliss, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Coming up, Stephan Kyriazis will make a theatrical return to the programme to share his thoughts on the musical of F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby, which opened in London's West End this week. This is Sunday with Michael Portillo, only on GB News.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
High pressure is in charge mainly across Europe at the moment, but its positioning is leading to some slightly different conditions. Out across Iberia, there's plentiful amounts of sunshine and a really lovely day to come tomorrow in particular. There are some showers, though, lingering around Italy, parts of the Balkans, just to watch out for. And there's quite a keen breeze developing from the Black Sea down through into the Aegean, so it is going to be quite fresh along some of those Greek islands. But with high pressure sticking around, it is going to be remaining fairly settled into next week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, very good morning. This is your GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. It's a slight north-south contrast as we head into this second half of the weekend. There are a couple areas of low pressure just skirting Northern Ireland and Scotland to provide a cloudier, breezier and damper theme overall today. Outbreaks of rain will be on and off here throughout. But with high pressure in charge across the bulk of England and Wales, it's going to be a drier and brighter day to come here. There is some early morning mist and fog patches around, but they'll be clearing off fairly readily. So certainly once we head towards late morning and into the afternoon, there'll be plenty of sunshine beginning to develop. In that sunshine, though, temperatures are going to be responding, and so we're going to be seeing temperatures climb close towards that 20 degrees Celsius mark, if not 22 or 23 across some parts of southeastern England. So it is going to be feeling rather warm if you're running the Manchester and London marathons. The cloud across the north will hold temperatures back a little bit here, but certainly still 16 to 18 degrees Celsius is above average for this point in the year. Rain, though, always lingering across parts of northern Scotland, and the frontal system associated with this is really going to be very slow moving as we head into the overnight period. So there's always the continued risk of some outbreaks of rain across these far northern areas into the start of Monday morning as well. Elsewhere, though, a dry night to come, and underneath the clearest skies, we'll see temperatures drop down towards mid, perhaps low single figures, so maybe a patchy grass frost for parts of England and Wales first thing tomorrow morning. But as we head throughout the day, this rain in the north is slowly going to progress even further northwards, and that's going to allow that sunshine to permeate into more areas of Northern Ireland, the far north of England, southern and eastern Scotland as well. So for many of us, Monday is going to be a very fine day overall. Plentiful amounts of decent weather in there if you are heading outside, and again seeing 20 to 23 degrees Celsius, and that's only the start. As we head into the rest of next week, temperatures will be climbing even further, perhaps towards the high 20s on Wednesday. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. Old sport Stefan Kyriazis joins me once more to reflect on the highs and lows from the theatrical world this week. Welcome, Stefan. I called you old sport, of course, because of The Great Gatsby.
Yeah, less of the old, but thank you.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah.
That's right. It's a young sport. Yes, it's The Great Gatsby, and this show is the musical adaptation of it, and it uses old sport a lot. People have commented on it. It gets a bit relentless, and we're like, we get the point. But we've got, first up, we've got a bit of a trailer mishmash, just to get in the mood. It's very, very glamorous and gorgeous, and you can see this from the trailer.
To that kiss, to
Seeing the scale of that and the glamour, it might be worth mentioning now that this is at the Coliseum in London, which is where the English National Opera normally plays. And I mention it just because it's one of the very largest auditoria.
A huge
and one of the very largest stages.
Yes, and this is a Broadway production, absolutely brought over from Broadway, and it looks like it. Costumes are incredible, sets are incredible, and there's a backdrop screen that is the most beautiful I've ever seen in any theatre show. It conjures up mansions on Long Island. You get the horrible industrial, grim Valley of Ashes from the book. The sets are spectacular, stunning. The music is it just feels like it's going to break into Les Mis or Phantom all the time. You can kind of feel all the notes and pastiches from other stuff. So it's really effective while you're there. Doesn't necessarily linger. The chap we saw there is actually Broadway. There's no footage yet of the UK cast. However, Jamie Moscato is playing Gatsby in the London production, and his voice is better than Broadway. It's the most beautiful thing I've heard. So that alone, and he brings a different feel to Gatsby. So Gatsby, of course, is the enigmatic millionaire, jazz age, prohibition age, Long Island and New York, and he's very mysterious, huge parties that he doesn't go to, and no one knows much about him. And Moscato really brings in a lovely bit of vulnerability. He's basically absolutely obsessed with Daisy, who is played here by Frances Mailey McCann, who also played the lead in Bonnie and Clyde. No real chemistry. It looks really beautiful, and everyone said the same thing. This book is about class warfare, old money, new money. The whole point of all the parties and the glamour, ultimately, is it's the American dream just out of reach. Yes. It also contrasts horrifically with how poor much of America is. And also, it's a show, an act, and Gatsby himself is putting on a show to hide everything that's behind. And everything from the kind of Robert Redford film in the 70s, Baz Luhrmann's insanely over-the-top film from 2013, everyone just goes, oh, beautiful clothes, costumes, sets. Yeah. And they never quite get to the melancholy. It's supposed to be a memory. Our narrator, Nick, is remembering a dream of another man's dream. So it's supposed to have this little sort of just out of reach, the whole light across the water thing that you can't quite get to. And this, it's just flat. It's right there in front of you. What's there in front of you is wonderful and impressive and gorgeous, but it just didn't touch me. I didn't feel like I was dreaming at all. It's just very brash and right there. But, I mean, there are cars on the stage. It is spectacular.
Stefan, if I may say so, that was a really well-considered review. I absolutely...
You sound surprised.
Well, I absolutely associate that with that. I absolutely get what you're saying. Yeah. Very, very interesting. But I am very interested in theatre craft, and I think I might go and see it. Just for the theatre craft.
Absolutely stunning.
And at least one magical voice.
Yes, I mean, his voice and the song he sings for her, and then another one, The Past Is Catching Up With Me, holds the longest note I've ever heard, and it's a belt, it's a high note. It's a glorious instrument, his voice. So, yeah, I would praise it for that alone. It was beautiful for that.
Given that the English National Opera performs there, this can't be a very long run, can it, or can it?
This one's only on until September the 7th, so it's a summer season. They've been doing this now. We had My Fair Lady, we've had various other things. I think we had one of the Studio Ghibli shows in there. I mean, obviously we know about the ENO funding and everything, so they bring in these great, big, huge, sort of almost international, gorgeous productions in the summer to get the money in, a bit like most places do Panto in Christmas. They've had a bumpy track record with some of them. This one, I hope it does well. If you're just coming, it's been called a return to the good old days of big, glamorous, bombastic musicals, and that it is. So if you just go for that, it's great fun.
We have time to consider a new piece of work. Tell me about that.
So that's The Brightening Air. That's on at the Old Vic. That's Conor McPherson. He did The Girl from the North Country, which was using the music of Bob Dylan to take us again back to the Great Depression, this time in 1930s America. That was exquisite. This time he's taking us to Ireland. And actually what we've got, although I'm clearly very good at what I do, thank you, Michael, we've got the cast talking about the place. You don't have to listen to me.
It's House in the Countryside in the 80s in Ireland. We play three siblings.
Dermot, Stephen and Billy. Stephen and Billy still live in the family home.
Dermot doesn't live there.
Dermot doesn't live there.
I am the older sibling who's gone off to try and make a name of himself in the big town of Sligo. And I come back and you guys are still here. And I have something that I need to talk to you about. And I've brought a priest.
I'm a sort of semi-retired priest.
Very renegade priest. Yeah. He's in trouble with a lot of people. He's an uncle of the three people who live here.
And he's coming back.
And we have to resolve a lot of issues.
In this family, they all have separate wishes.
It all gets very
exciting.
Strange things happen from there.
Get spooky.
Don't miss it.
Does it get exciting?
It's fun. So, okay, basically two vastly different shows that I had the same problem with both. Lots is going on, lots is fun. Everybody is excellent. The whole cast is excellent. Chris O'Dowd is the most famous face there, and he plays the feckless oldest brother who's left the crumbling family fan house, gone out and made money in cafes and other businesses. But he's cheating on his really wonderful, devoted wife, who his other brother has always been in love with. So far, it's just a very sort of kitchen sink drama, sort of, in this case Irish, but family drama. The old priest that comes in sort of changes all the dynamics. And in the end, for me, it went a little bit Father Ted. It just was a bit silly. But underneath, there are all these really beautiful, again, aching things. The sister is autistic, which is great, and it's done very well by Rosie Shee, and she is the central character, and she talks a lot about trains as her latest obsession, and it's about junctions where you can go change the train, disappear, travel somewhere else, have a new life, all the way to the Ganges where your bones are burnt, thrown into the river, you don't reincarnate. It's glorious. There's mentions of kind of mythic creatures. There's a magic spring that makes people fall in love. I loved all of this. I wanted more of all of this. And in the end, I guess the point is everyone's dreaming for something and they're looking for meaning which they can't find. But that is also true of the play. And so for the characters and the audience, we're left a little bit adrift. So very enjoyable performances, but a little bit flawed and empty for me. That's on at the Old Vic until June.
Absolutely splendid. Stefan Kyriazis, thank you very much for coming in. That concludes the first hour of Sunday with Michael Portillo. Please join me again from noon, where my panel will discuss the ethics of the peace deal, which is probably being imposed on Ukraine by President Trump. We'll begin to reflect on the upcoming 80th anniversary of VE Day with Peter Johnston from the Imperial War Museum. The composer Keith Burstein will join me to discuss his new composition, and Professor Douglas Headley will discuss what is the agenda as Cambridge University decides to stop ranking students according to their exam results. All of that in a moment. This is Sunday with Michael Portillo, only on GB News.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, a very good afternoon. This is your GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. Warm sunshine is increasingly going to prevail as we head over the next few days. And it's all courtesy of high pressure that is gradually building its way in from the south and east, but it's not quite across all areas of the UK just yet. In the short term, we do still have these weather fronts just skirting the far northwest of the UK, so some further outbreaks of rain will be continuing for northwestern areas of Scotland this evening and overnight. Elsewhere, though, it will be staying dry underneath some of these clear skies across England and Wales. There will be some mist and fog patches developing, so it will be quite murky first thing on Monday morning for some of us, and there could be a patchy grass frost where temperatures just drop down to mid or low single figures. We may also just see a little bit of low cloud lingering through the channel as we start off Monday morning, and that could just skirt some southern coastal areas of England first thing. Nevertheless, though, for the bulk of England and Wales, there'll be a good amount of sunshine to greet off the new working week. It is still going to be cloudier first thing across Northern Ireland and parts of Scotland in particular. The rain most persistent for areas of the Highlands, with it just very gradually moving northwards as we head throughout the day. So certainly still some outbreaks for the Outer Hebrides and into the Northern Isles as well. But as that frontal system continues its journey northwards, that will allow the sunshine to develop in a bit more as well for parts of Northern Ireland, Northern England, central southern Scotland, starting to see some brightness developing as we head into the afternoon as well. And certainly for the rest of England and Wales, it is going to be another fine day. Temperatures topping up at around 18 to 24 degrees Celsius, so it is certainly going to be feeling pleasantly warm where you see that sunshine developing. And with high pressure building in more confidently as we head into the rest of next week, things will be staying relatively fine and settled, and those temperatures will continue to climb with a day-on-day heating from that sunshine continuing, and so temperatures widely into the mid-20s for many of us. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
courtesy of Marquis Leisure, you could be driving away with this brand new Elnag Baron 560 motorhome. It comfortably sleeps 4, comes with sky roof, integrated kitchen and bathroom, and is worth over £67,000. And that's not all, as we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that wherever this motorhome takes you, it takes you there in style. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there short and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Good afternoon. The American writer Hal Borland once wrote, "April is a promise that May is bound to keep." On this final Sunday in April, I solemnly undertake to offer you another hour of current affairs, music, politics and culture on Sunday with Michael Portillo. Britain officially offers unwavering support to Ukraine in resisting the Russian aggression that has seized large areas of its territory illegally. So would Britain be morally obliged to resist President Trump if he imposes a peace that rewards the aggressor? My panel will return to discuss that. I'll look ahead to the 80th anniversary of VE Day with Dr. Peter Johnston from the Imperial War Museum. 3 new publications from the museum mark the occasion. Composer Keith Burstein, who has consistently opposed the atonal movement in music, has a new composition, which he will discuss with me in advance of its first performance. And Cambridge University has announced that it will stop ranking its students based on exam results. One professor at the university, Douglas Headley, will tell me why he fears declining standards. But first, your latest news headlines from Sam Francis.
Michael, thank you very much, and good afternoon to you. Let's start with an update on the situation in Vancouver, where police say now 9 people are known to have died after an SUV ploughed through a crowd at a street festival in the city in what they are calling a tragic incident. Witnesses describe seeing the vehicle driving straight through the crowd, leaving bodies scattered along the road. The driver, a 30-year-old Vancouver resident known to police, is now in custody. Officers say they're confident that it was not an act of terrorism, but the motive remains unclear. Police have yet to confirm how many others were injured in that deadly rampage. Counter-terror police in Leeds are investigating a dramatic armed attack there after 2 women were injured with a crossbow and a firearm. It happened in broad daylight during the busy Otley Run pub crawl. Police found a 38-year-old man with self-inflicted wounds and arrested him at the scene. All 3 were taken to hospital with injuries not thought to be life-threatening. Both weapons were recovered, with officers now trying to uncover a motive. The Home Secretary has called it a serious and violent incident and praised the swift response of emergency services. Toilets should be based on biology. That is the message from the Equalities Watchdog in new guidance for workplaces, shops and for hospitals. It follows a landmark Supreme Court ruling that the word woman in equality law means biological woman, not gender identity. Thousands, though, have protested the ruling, calling it a betrayal of trans rights. And while ministers say there'll be no toilet police, they do admit we all have to adapt to the court's decision. Meanwhile, Kemi Badenoch says transitioning should involve a clear, medically supervised process, not self-identification. The Conservative leader says the idea that anyone can simply self-identify never sat right with her. She's been in a war of words with Sir Keir Starmer after his U-turn on trans rights and support for that ruling that defines sex as biological. She's also repeated calls for the Prime Minister to apologise to ex-Labour MP Rosie Duffield, who quit the Labour Party over women's rights. The UK's wildfire season is off to a record-breaking start, burning through more land in just 4 months than at any other year in over a decade. Satellite data shows over 29,000 hectares scorched so far, with 1 week in April alone seeing the highest weekly record. Experts blame a parched spring and warm climate change is likely to make it more common. Scientists say their fear is that summer could mean that there is one unstoppable blaze that burns for days and threatens homes. Breaking news this lunchtime, the Tower Bridge has been hit with red powder paint during the London Marathon as protesters demanded an end to UK arms sales to Israel. 2 demonstrators, you can see here, from Youth Demand jumped the barriers and threw the substance in front of the men's elite race. They were quickly arrested by police and named as 18-year-old Willow Holland from Bristol and Christy North. The pair said they'd run out of options to stop what they called a genocide in Gaza. And just before I hand you back to Michael, an update then on the situation in the marathon here in London. Ethiopia's Tigst Assefa has set a new women's world record, speeding through in 2 hours, 15 minutes, 50 seconds. And in the men's race, Kenya's Sebastian Sawe has made his London debut. And not only his debut, his first win, crossing the line in 2 hours, 2 minutes and 27 seconds. Slightly slower than I would have done it, but I'm stuck here. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back with you very soon.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Sam Francis. European powers, prominent amongst them Britain, have supported Ukraine, which was invaded more than 3 years ago by Russia. Weapons have been supplied and many pledges have been made. But it seems that Donald Trump will insist that the victim should accept that its territory has been lost to the aggressor. Without the United States' practical support with weapons and intelligence, Ukraine is in danger of losing on the battlefield. And the Europeans cannot make up the deficiency. Should Britain accept an American proposal if it demands a cessation of the fighting with no security guarantee to Ukraine? Or should we risk breaching our relations with President Trump and denounce his ceasefire deal as unjust and dangerous? Joining me again are journalist Nikki Hodgson, former Conservative Minister Tom Pursglove, and writer and broadcaster Candice Holdsworth. Candice, what's your reaction to that dilemma?
I feel like whenever I make a statement about Donald Trump, it's quickly out of date, depending on what he's posted next on Truth Social. I mean, I was here when there was the big blow-up between Vance, Zelensky and Trump, and everyone just thought, oh, no, what should Zelensky have done? But now, weeks later, we see those amazing images from the Vatican, from Pope Francis's funeral, of Trump and Zelensky talking, a very different body language. And we've seen Trump making a number of different statements. His tone has changed so radically about towards Vladimir Putin, and he seems to sort of be coming around to the more establishment notion that actually it is Ukraine, it is Russia that is the obstacle to peace, not Ukraine, because that is how Trump has been portraying it.
I find you possibly overly optimistic.
Maybe.
But it's also allowing you to slither off the ethical and moral point. What if, as we think it is, Donald Trump's peace deal involves recognising that the territory lost to Ukraine is lost?
What I would have said is that Ukraine should have made the most of Kursk, which they once had. They held that was a bargaining position, but now it looks like that might be lost. I think that the problem is that the US is trying to pivot to China. And so
should we resist Trump, or should we go along with whatever happens?
Oh, no, we shouldn't go along with it. I mean, you see people like Boris Johnson sort of saying, no, this deal will not work. And I think that saying that continually will hopefully influence things. I think there's no way that you can accept that kind of deal. It will have no lasting power whatsoever. But I think it's, what's going on in Washington at the moment. I mean, they want to pivot away from the Ukraine conflict. They want to go towards becoming more confrontational with China. So I think it's very hard for them to reconcile those two positions.
Nikki, you've been nodding, but what are you nodding at? If Trump forces Ukraine to accept the deal, then Ukraine will sign the deal. I mean, it may do so, believing it to be wholly unjust, saying that it's wholly unjust. What are the Europeans going to do if they don't like the deal? What can they do? They can huff and puff, but they can't blow the wall down, can they?
No, well, first of all, I do think it's immoral. I think it's really important that we stand up to Trump. This deal is not good enough. Fundamentally, Russia invaded a sovereign nation. It goes against all bounds of how we have so far operated globally in terms of global law and respect for other countries' sovereignty. And the reality is, if we allow this deal to go through, Putin will rest his army, he will build his resources again, and he will go again. He will invade another neighbouring territory. Poland already thinks that's going to happen. And we can't afford for our safety to be in the hands of Trump like this, because the reality is, whatever Trump's doing, geographically, he never has to worry about this, really, because he's not in Europe.
So you'll be furious with Sir Keir Starmer if he says, this is the deal that's been made. We didn't like it very much, but this...
He's got to push back. I will be very disappointed in him if he doesn't.
Tom, what's your reaction?
Morally doesn't sit right with me, but also practically, I think the lessons of history tell us that deals like this just don't hold true. And when you consider that this is about them handing over this territory, accepting that status quo position as it is today, when you think about the opportunity that allows for the Russians to rearm, I do think that what we would simply see is a period where there wouldn't be fighting, but that this would then start up again with threats to other countries. And I just think that is unpalatable, and we shouldn't make those mistakes.
Are we going to have another display of European impotence? So we are going to huff and puff. But there's nothing we can do about it. If the Americans withdraw the intelligence from the Ukrainians, it's all over. The war has to stop. That's the reality that Zelensky is facing. I think, we British have to face that too, don't we?
The Western alliance, I think, needs to hang together. And it is really important that there is that united front in Europe in response to this, but also working with the US. I think there is going to be a crunch here for the Prime Minister, who has tried to play this skillfully, who has tried to stay close to the Americans, but it does feel like there is a choice coming down the track. I hope that change in language that we've seen over the course of the last 24 hours is something that holds. I think Boris has been very eloquent. I think he's really got to the nub of the problem here, the nub of the challenge. All that Ukraine would be left with in response to this deal, if it were agreed, is the minerals arrangement. That just isn't enough.
Candice, you're all very indignant. And I'm very indignant as well. I mean, I have been talking about this from long before Trump became President of the United States for the second time. But I am worried about what this practically means. I mean, Europeans complaining doesn't mean anything. This is the result of our own policies. We don't have the armaments, we don't have the intelligence systems to be useful enough to Ukraine, for Ukraine to continue the war if the United States is not going to support them. That's the fact of it.
That's the facts. I mean, I'm usually a pragmatist on these issues. I think, though, so America has taken the line with Europe that you need to start meeting your defence spending budgets. Europe needs to get a lot stronger, that America doesn't want to play this role anymore. But I don't think America could completely isolate itself. I mean, it can't just I don't think America would just abandon Ukraine. I mean, there's been a lot of brinkmanship, absolutely, but I don't think that they would just walk away because they still need European allies. And also, I think that, like I was saying just now, they're trying to pivot more to China, hoping to peel Russia away. But I think as everyone learns over time, it's not that easy with Russia. You know, they've got their own interests. They've moved more towards the BRICS countries. It's not going to be as simple as they thought it was going to be.
Nikki, at the beginning of this, Candice was drawing some encouragement from the picture of the two men on the two chairs in St. Peter's in Rome. I'm not sure that I'm not even more discouraged by this, inasmuch as it appears that Trump is a pillow who bears the impression of the last head laid upon him. I mean, if he really has changed his view simply by meeting Zelensky for 5 minutes in St. Peter's, that's pretty worrying too.
No, I mean, look, I really admire Zelensky. It's a David and Goliath situation for him with Ukraine and Russia, and he is a man of integrity, and whatever you think about him, or whichever way you think this should be played, he doesn't let the fact that he's in the kind of losing seat affect him. He stands up to people, and, you know, that incident in the Oval Office was mortifying. It said so much more about Trump's pettiness than it did about Zelensky. And I actually really hope that Zelensky holding strong and saying to Trump, this isn't good enough, has changed Trump's mind, because that's a leader. That's a leader that you can admire.
Tom, is there a problem here for Nigel Farage, who's been so closely associated with Trump? I think I've detected a certain amount of loosening of the bond that he claims with Trump in recent weeks. But if there is a peace deal, which actually the British sort of hate, and if ministers and the Conservative Party are saying they dislike it very strongly indeed, where does that leave Farage? What's he going to say?
I think that, as you say, there has been a loosening of that alliance, so to speak, between Nigel and the Trump administration in recent weeks. And I do think the public sentiment here in the UK is very much behind the Ukrainians. I think the majority of people here recognise the severe threat that this poses on the European continent, that we've been incredibly generous as a country in supporting Ukraine, both through the sort of refugee scheme, but also in terms of resource. And I think that people would want us to carry on in that spirit. And Nigel, like any of us in frontline British politics, would, I think, have real issue with, for example, the Russians having a veto over membership of NATO. That, to me, is a completely unacceptable position. It would set a very troubling precedent. That is just something that I don't think that we can countenance. And I think it's right that Western leaders stand up for our values, that we assert ourselves behind our institutions. But I also think not just words matter in this respect, also our actions. And that's why things like increasing our defence spending is going to become an increasing priority. But that does involve difficult choices at home around our other spending priorities. OK, panel, all three. The peace deal is as follows. It's announced by President Trump that there's no security guarantee, no question of Ukraine joining NATO, that the United States recognises the annexation of Crimea, that Ukraine has to accept, at least for the time being, that the territories that have been captured in this last bit of violence are gone for the time being. Do you then say, representing Britain, we denounce this treaty as unjust and dangerous?
Yes.
I don't think you've got any choice. We cannot accept that.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Very good. Very brave panel. Very good. Thank you very much to my panel, Tom Pursglove, Candice Holdsworth and Nikki Hodgson. It's time now for today's Daily Reflection.
The GB News Daily Reflection.
Hi, I'm Mark, and I'm a vicar in the Church of England in Middlesbrough. If you ever read up on Roman emperors, you'll notice that some of them are a bit fickle. Supposedly, Emperor Tiberius, when a local fisherman offered him his finest catch of fish, had the man tortured with the same fish. Caligula changed his mind on who his favourite senators were overnight and executed those who no longer appealed to him. Their gods were no better, randomly blessing and cursing whoever they pleased whenever they felt like it. That was the model of how he used absolute power and authority in that period of time. But compare that to Jesus. The Bible tells us that after the resurrection, he appears to most of his disciples, but Thomas, one of them, is absent. When Thomas hears about this, hears about Jesus' appearance, he refuses to believe. He boldly says, "Unless I see the nail marks in his hands, and put my finger where the nails were, and put my hands into his side, I will not believe." In the first century, a god or a king or an emperor wouldn't listen to such a demand. But Jesus is not like that. He graciously appears to Thomas and lets him do exactly what he's asked. Jesus says to him, "Put your finger here, see my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe." Society is better when our kings, emperors, politicians follow Jesus' model of how to use your power. That's true for all of us as well who hold some power. Jesus challenges me to use what little power I have, not to feed my own desire for authority, but to be like him, to be gracious and kind and patient with others instead.
Coming up, we'll look ahead to the 80th anniversary of VE Day with Dr. Peter Johnston from the Imperial War Museum, which has produced 3 new publications to mark the occasion. This is Sunday with Michael Portillo, only on GB News.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
A very good morning to you. And if you're planning to visit one of Britain's many beauty spots next bank holiday or Easter weekend, beware of your car.
Yeah, a rising number of tourist attractions are banning coaches and some cars to help ease overcrowding.
We're here to debate if vehicles should be stopped from parking near attractions. Government Relations Manager at the Countryside Alliance, David Bean, and founder of Fairfuel UK campaign, Howard Cox. Good morning to you both.
David, how much of a problem are tourists when there are too many of them and they bring their great camper vans and they park all their cars in a line so you actually can't see the beauty spot you went to see? How much of a problem is it?
It can be a significant problem in certain areas. I'm in Scotland for the holidays, and particularly in areas such as the Highlands and Islands, there are areas that have very, very badly been affected. Even some camper vans end up getting taken out to certain places on the islands and then just abandoned after a holiday is finished.
Honestly, this is horses for courses, and to be fair, you know, I actually do believe that we need better signage, better planning, and Cameron hit the nail on the head. You can't get to these beauty spots unless you have some sort of transport to get there. And, you know, public transport is woeful across the country in these areas. Obviously, yesterday in the Berlin Gap one, you can't legislate for idiots. It needs better signage, better information, but if you take people away from it, you take income away from the community. You know, I think any organisation that's promoting a beauty spot that's making money out of it should be paying for better signage, better parking facilities, etc. I do not like the idea of cars being, you know, queuing up illegally, you could say. That's ridiculous.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dordme, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. Thursday, the 8th of May, marks the 80th anniversary of the Allied victory in Europe. The anniversary will be marked across the country with 4 days of celebrations. The Imperial War Museum is republishing 3 Men in New Suits by J.B. Priestley, a novel that tells the unhappy story of 3 men who are demobilised at the end of the war and returned to their home village. The Director of Narrative and Content at the Imperial War Museums, Dr. Peter Johnston, has also written a new work detailing the last year of war in Europe, highly illustrated with photographs, called D-Day to V-Day. And he joins me. Great to see you. I was struck reading your book, and there's another one here that you're publishing called 1945, by the bloodiness of the last year of the war. I mean, after D-Day, it's by no means certain what progress the Allies are going to make. We get to the Battle of the Bulge with massive losses. And, of course, looking at the other end of it, you know, the casualties around the taking of Berlin as the Soviet forces are moving in against the Germans are at a very high level. It's a very bloody last year, isn't it?
Absolutely, and it's something that I think in popular memory we tend to have overlooked. When we sort of coalesce around these particular events, we think about D-Day, perhaps we think about Arnhem and Market Garden, and then we think about, well, the end of the war. But actually, exactly as you were saying, 1945 is actually the bloodiest year of the war anywhere. And there's a huge amount of intense fighting. And even though, really, since about 1942, it's been quite obvious that Germany will lose the war, the ground still has to be fought and still has to be taken. And that's what these books very much talk about. They talk about the actual process of achieving victory and establishing that control and liberating the countries that the Nazis had occupied in Northwest Europe. But then also J.B. Priestley's book talks about what happens afterwards and the new world that's created and how the people who are responsible for that reintegrate into that new world and society.
This J.B. Priestley novel, Three Men in New Suits. The new suits is a reference to the fact that those who were demobbed were given a suit. That's pretty much what they were given to go back into society. And, of course, people found it very, very difficult to reintegrate. That was written in the last month of the war, I think.
Yes, and it was published right after the end of the war. I mean, J.B. Priestley himself had actually served in the First World War, so he had a lot of experience about going off, fighting, coming back, reintegrating. And he'd worked throughout the Second World War and really established a name for himself on the BBC. And then he published this. And the wartime series that we do publish, these books were all published contemporary, either based on people's direct experiences or what they observed or works set during the Second World War that have fallen out of print. And the wartime classics is fantastic because in comparison to the original works, such as my colleague Tony's 1945 Visual History and my book, we are able to revisit the words of the people who are actually there and make sure that we look at this discourse in the around, so with a historical perspective, but also the contemporary one too.
There are so many things that one could focus on. The liberation of the extermination camps. Say something about that, please.
Well, I think that actually, again, where we have perhaps applied a bit of hindsight to our understanding of the Second World War is that we know what the Nazi regime was doing, we know about the extermination, the death camps. But at the time, these things were completely inconceivable to anybody who found them. They were nobody had even created them. There was no concept of what they were. And in January 1945, when the Red Army or essentially liberate Auschwitz, but from a British perspective, the Americans later at Dachau, you know, when the British arrived at Belsen, of which the anniversary of the liberation has only recently passed, you know, this is these are some of the most traumatic things that anybody's ever seen. And these are armies and these are soldiers who have fought their way across mountains and deserts and Northwest Europe, and they've seen some terrible things, and yet this is the thing that many of them remember as being the most horrific thing. You know, a camp where people weren't being murdered on an industrial scale as they were in the East, but they were essentially being murdered by neglect.
By starvation, for example? By
starvation, being cramped into conditions where disease was rampant with no medical care, no medical facilities. And there were thousands of people dead in the camp when the British arrived, and thousands of people died afterwards. Even surviving the survival of Belsen was in itself a notable act. And it's remarkable, the memorial there at Belsen still stands, but it's actually folded into the British Army's experience even after the war, where the units that liberate Belsen, they occupy the nearby German army camp at Hohne, and the Hohne remains the base of the Desert Rats for essentially the next 70 years, and they only actually leave in 2015.
Yeah, extraordinary. Now, we must remember that when we got to VE Day, there was no idea that the war in Asia-Pacific was going to end quite shortly. So make a comment or two about that. What was the prospect for the war in Asia-Pacific?
Only that it would carry on. And there was an expectation it would very much carry on. In fact, the British Army and the efforts of 21st Army Group, which are detailed in my book, they were called the British Liberation Army, the BLA. And the soldiers sort of repurposed that and nicknamed that as Burma Looms Ahead. because the expectation was very much that having achieved the victory in Germany, they would all move to the east and fight there. There was no understanding. Obviously, the atomic weapons were completely secret at this point, and there was no idea that they would be used to such devastating effect, and that would compel Japan to surrender. And so whilst there was enormous celebration on VE Day, because this was obviously the end of 6 years of war that had directly threatened Britain and had struck Britain so heavily across the Blitz and other campaigns, the V1, the V2 weapons, etc. as well, then there was an understanding that the war itself wasn't over. And in fact, Churchill himself says, let's allow this moment of celebration, but then let's look forward ahead to the war to come as well and finish that one too.
I mean, interestingly, politics were allowed to return to normal straight away after VE Day. We have a general election, and of course we have a change of government, even though the prospect at that time was that the war would go on for some years.
Absolutely. There is no understanding or expectation that the war against Japan will end in 1945. What Britain is working up to do in the Far East, and actually the story that we talk about in the Second World War galleries at IWM and across our sites, is that they are preparing to go out and fight, and they're going to reoccupy first Malaya and then reoccupy Singapore, and then eventually they will build up and gear towards the invasion of the Japanese home islands. In fact, HMS Belfast, that floats on the Thames, was being refitted and sent out to the Far East to take part in that naval campaign. And so it really, that's why I think while VE Day is a source of huge outpouring of emotion, as well as tinged with sadness for people who had already lost loved ones, there is an expectation for many people whose loved ones are out in the East that there is no idea about when they might come home. In the end, the demobilisation process happens very quickly. 750,000 people are demobilised by the end of 1945 alone.
And one has to bear in mind then that as the decision is being made to use atomic weapons, the considerations are that millions more lives will be lost on both sides if it comes to taking Japan, that possibly all the prisoners of war in Japan will be massacred if the Allies invade Japan. These are some of the considerations that lie behind the momentous decision to use atomic weapons.
Absolutely. I think the Japanese experience, or rather the Japanese reaction to the American invasion of some of the Japanese home islands at Saipan, Okinawa, and the advance there has really demonstrated that there is a completely indoctrinated population that is preparing to fight essentially until the Japanese in the home islands, America's occupied, are being told that the emperor specifically says to them, if you commit suicide rather than surrender, you'll be held in the same level of honour as a soldier who dies for the Empire of Japan. And that is what the Allies are faced with. It's the American effort that is really driving that through the Pacific, but it's the British who are eradicating and pushing the Japanese out first, really all the way from the borders of the Indian-Burma border right down towards Yangon, and then into Malaya, into Singapore, which is actually officially surrenders officially in September 1945.
And very briefly to end, how would you like us to mark VE Day, Victory in Europe?
I mean, certainly Imperial War Museum, it's interesting because we remember every day. We don't wait for these big anniversaries. People can come to our sites, they can engage with the history, which we're privileged to be able to share with people. You can access this content at any point on our website. We've got 4.5 million photographs from the Second World War alone that we're steadily going to digitise as we think about the centenary of the start of the Second World War. But I think what the anniversary period represents is a great opportunity for us to pause, to reflect, to think about the experiences of people whose actions, very ordinary people who lived in these very extraordinary times, but whose actions shaped and created the world around us today. We are the country we are because of what happened in the Second World War. Events like VE Day, it's even less about the event, it's the day itself, it's everything that happened up to it. And I think it's a really wonderful opportunity for us as a nation to invest some time and think about that.
What an excellent summary. Dr. Peter Johnson, thank you so much. Coming up, the composer Keith Bernstein will join me to discuss his upcoming concert at the Royal College of Music. But first, your latest news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. Leading the news this hour, 9 people have been killed in Vancouver after an SUV ploughed through a crowd at a street festival there in what police are calling a tragic incident. Witnesses describe seeing the vehicle driving straight through the crowd, leaving bodies scattered along the road. The driver, a 30-year-old Vancouver resident known to police, is now in custody. Officers say they're confident it was not an act of terrorism, but the motive at this stage remains unclear. Police have also yet to confirm how many others were injured. Counter-terror police are investigating a dramatic armed attack in Leeds after 2 women were injured with a crossbow and a firearm. It happened in broad daylight during the busy Otley-run pub crawl. Police found a 38-year-old man with self-inflicted wounds and arrested him at the scene. All 3 were taken to hospital with injuries not thought to be life-threatening. Both weapons were recovered, with officers now trying to uncover a motive. The Home Secretary has called it a serious and violent incident and praised the swift response of emergency services. Toilets should be based on biology. That is the message from the Equalities Watchdog in new guidance for workplaces, shops and hospitals. It follows a landmark Supreme Court ruling that the word woman in equality law means biological sex, not gender identity. Thousands have protested that ruling, though, calling it a betrayal of trans rights. And while ministers say there'll be no toilet police, they have admitted we all have to adapt to the court's decision. A single white rose and the name Francis mark the tomb of the Pope as new images show his final resting place beneath marble arches in Rome. He was buried at his favourite church, not the Vatican, in a private ceremony after Saturday's funeral, honouring his personal wish to rest in the basilica he visited often. Mourners queued from dawn to pay their respects to the 88-year-old, remembered for urging the world to build bridges, not walls. Attention now turns, though, to his successor, with the largest conclave in modern history expected to begin early next month. And Tower Bridge was hit this afternoon with red powder paint during the London Marathon as protesters demanded an end to UK arms sales to Israel. 2 demonstrators from Youth Demand jumped the barriers and threw the substance in front of the men's elite race. They were quickly arrested by police, though, and named as 18-year-old Willow Holland and Christy North. The pair said they'd run out of options to stop what they called a genocide in Gaza. And just to get you up to date then on the standings following the London Marathon today, Ethiopia's Tigst Assefa has set a new women's world record, winning the race, speeding through in 2 hours 15 and 50 seconds. And Kenya's Sebastian Sawe wins the men's race on his London debut, crossing the line in 2 hours 2 minutes and 27 seconds. Congratulations to both of them. That's it from me. Michael will be back very shortly after this.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
He's not just the first Brit, he's the first European, is that
Correct.
right, to win the Grand Slam?
To win the Grand Slam. See, the Grand Slam is something that's never really mentioned because it's so rare to win all 4 majors. Well, this is what I was going to head to. Can you get closer, get back into we can hang out with Rory for a while?
Rory would be our mate.
He would be great. I think he'd get on great with us.
I tell you what he is. He's the most ordinary guy. You meet him. I remember one night, he's good company.
Yeah.
And I always thought that there was a weakness with him, that he was too friendly with too many people.
Yeah.
I mean, people I'll not name, but I remember, people at the height of their career and they're watching games or they're watching... I remember once with the snooker tournament, walking up to a player and saying, incidentally, when this is over, could I... And he just said, shut your mouth.
You are kidding me.
He did. Yeah, he turned
is he alive or is he dead?
Oh, he's very famous. And he said to me, never... And he was wearing sunglasses and he took them off. He said, never, ever interrupt me when I'm watching snooker. And, but I learned something from that,
Yeah, but come on.
I mean, it's rude, but you can kind of understand that some people need to kind of psychologically protect them. I don't know. And it must be frustrating sometimes when people interrupt you. But on the other hand,
but for me,
be a
Miriam,
nice
there's
guy.
no except bad manners.
No, I know.
There's no excuse for bad manners.
No, that's right.
At least you go, look, sorry, but...
I'm just concentrating at the moment. Can you speak to me later or something like that?
Please, will you shut up?
But you were saying yesterday, I mean, he's now one of the most famous, one of the most successful people from Northern Ireland. I think there was even a suggestion he should do an open-top bus tour.
Well, that was me yesterday.
Oh, was it you?
I think
Okay.
absolutely should, yeah.
Why?
Eamon.
Not today, it's very
Eamon will be driving the bus, and there'll be Rory there.
I have a bus with my picture on it.
I know, yes, I know. That's what they want. They just have the Eamon bus, Rory on the top,
nobody on
waving.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. Composer Keith Burstein, who has consistently spoken against the atonal movement in music, has a new composition, Angelus, a violin concerto which will premiere at the Royal College of Music on Thursday. It explores current tensions in Europe and the world. Joining me now is Keith Burstein. Welcome back. I say that you've spoken against the atonal movement in music. Part of the dispute is about funding, isn't it? Is it your view that atonal music is getting an unfair amount of public funding?
The perception was about 30 years ago when I first brought up these issues that, yes, the culture of atonal music can only really survive with subsidy. And of course there's a limited amount of subsidy, and it comes from public money. And also that the use of that public money should be accountable. But there was perhaps something wrong in that regard. And there's no connection with reality. There's no connection with demand. Of course, on the other hand, it's incredibly important that we have complete freedom of expression in society and that every different sort of thing should be made possible and supported if possible. The problem was that the whole of the support of that public money seemed to be taken over by that one genre. So the problem actually was a problem of freedom of expression. That's why a group of us at a certain point thought there's something actually sort of almost politically wrong with this, perhaps arguably almost morally wrong, because public money is being used for a very particular purpose. That purpose has been taken over by a particular cabal who are extremely ruthless in excluding any other form of expression. It's obvious that the whole world loves melody and harmony. It's what I call universal music. So when you wake up in the morning, you're hearing all sorts of music straight away. You know, if you switch on the TV.
So in your case, if it's not public subsidy, where does the money come from for your new composition?
Well, of course, that's the other side of the coin. Where does it come from? You know, you have to wait and find the right people, I think. There are people out there all over the world.
You've found a patron, haven't you?
I happen, for the last 7 years or so, to have a patron, yes, Mark Redman, who works in finance.
Right.
And I met him actually through Vladimir Ashkenazy, the famous conductor. Mark liked my music, and he saw the point of what I was saying. You know, and actually I think many people understand this argument.
Yes.
You know, that the whole of human music actually is much more closely related than we think. And that's why our music is tonal, we call tonal. It's based on scales, C major and G major. And that's why we love music, because there's a link between the structure of sound itself and our tonal music, our melodies and our harmonies.
Let's just listen to a tiny extract from Angelus, your new violin concerto. So actually what we're seeing there is obviously a rehearsal, because you've scored it for the entire orchestra, haven't you?
Yes, that's right.
You've brought the score in with you, and I'm just going to hold that up. So that's fabulously complicated, because what we have here is all the lines relating to all the different parts of the orchestra. Now, tell me a little bit about this piece. It's in 3 movements. The movements have names. To the extent that you can tell me, you're an artist, so you can't tell me everything, but The movements are motivated by what? Inspired by what?
I mean, when I began writing the concerto, which was last November, and I wrote it very quickly in about 6 weeks, to my surprise. I mean, the violin is the epitome of lyricism. But what happened after I started was about 20 bars in, this kind of snare drum suddenly appeared. I say appeared because I don't feel as I'm writing, it's just, yes. And it had this incredibly kind of heroic feel, and it's like a sort of remorseless energy. And that actually persisted through the whole work. So the titles are, in the first movement, The Summoning, the second movement, English Dawn, and the third movement is Excalibur.
Which is the sword and the stone, is it?
Yes, that's right. And so what I think was happening was that, and this is before the advent of Trump in his second incarnation and everything that has transpired since, is that to be an artist you have to be open to the whole world. And it was as though a sort of anticipation was flooding into me of a moment when we're going to actually have to summon a form of courage to face what I perceive to be an existential threat to our culture of freedom. You know, the fact is that Russia is attacking Europe on its eastern flank, and it looks as though America is withdrawing. And so somehow I seemed to be anticipating this. I mean, some people hearing the last movement, which is extraordinarily stirring and full of an unstoppable, remorseless momentum, they might feel that it's almost invoking war. But what I feel is that I'm summoning an army of the spirit, an army of the soul, the strength that we need to survive, because we have to defend what we are. You know, the experiment with freedom is very recent in human history.
Yes.
Yes, it's only the last 100 years. My mother was the first generation who had the vote for women.
Absolutely.
You know, so we have to now defend this, and we have to find the courage to do that.
Very interesting. We only have time now for you to tell us that it's at the Royal College of Music.
Yes.
The premiere.
Yes.
On what date?
It's on Thursday, on the 1st of May. I just want to mention the player there was David Horvat, who I've written this for, who's a remarkable young player, a name to watch.
Very good. And yours too. Thank you very much indeed. There we are. We're seeing him briefly on our screen, the violinist. Thank you very much, Keith Burstein. Just briefly, the deadline has been extended, and we're delighted to say that GB News Breakfast has been nominated for a Trick Award. We've reached the long list for the best news programme, and we need your help. All of these awards are voted for by you at home. The deadline is 9 o'clock tonight, so please scan the QR code on the screen right now, or go to poll-trick.org.uk to vote for us. We're also delighted to announce that our very own Charlie Peters has been nominated in the Best News Presenter category. Once again, that QR code is on your screens now. Coming up, Cambridge University has announced that it will stop ranking its students based on exam results. Professor Douglas Headley will join me to denounce the proposal. This is Sunday with Michael Portillo, only on GB News.
Be nice to escape the grey.
Clear skies, here we come.
As clear as our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
High pressure is in charge mainly across Europe at the moment, but its positioning is leading to some slightly different conditions. Out across Iberia, there's plentiful amounts of sunshine and a really lovely day to come tomorrow in particular. There are some showers though lingering around Italy, parts of the Balkans just to watch out for. And there's quite a keen breeze developing from the Black Sea down through into the Aegean, so it is going to be quite fresh along some of those Greek islands. But with high pressure sticking around, it is going to be remaining fairly settled into next week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, this is your GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. Throughout this second half of the weekend, there is north-south contrasts across the UK. High pressure is in charge in the south, keeping things relatively fine and settled, but it's low pressure in charge further north, with these weather fronts just skirting past Northern Ireland and parts of Scotland. So there will be outbreaks of rain on and off throughout the day. Quite a grey, drab and dull day here, unfortunately. It is also going to be pretty breezy across the northern half of the UK. Further towards the south, though, with high pressure in there, there's plentiful amounts of sunshine after this morning's early mist and fog has now cleared its way off, and certainly temperatures will be responding to that sunshine. Highs quite widely 20 to 22 degrees Celsius. Still 18 for parts of Northern Ireland and central Scotland, so that's still above average for this time of year. But the breeze will have an impact on the feel of things, and certainly for the far north, the rain will make it feel not quite as pleasant overall. This rain is going to be relatively slow moving this evening and overnight. Really, for parts of the Highlands in particular, it will be quite persistent in places, perhaps also heavy at times as well. And it's going to be a drier night further towards the south, and then underneath any of those clearer skies, we again could see some mist and fog patches developing, and perhaps a patchy grass frost in some very sheltered rural spots where temperatures just drop into mid or low single figures. Nevertheless, once any of that mist and fog clears its way off, it should be a reasonably fine day to come once again across central southern areas. We could see a little bit of low cloud just lingering across the very far south coast, but the sunshine should now develop a bit more widely across parts of northern England into southern Scotland and parts of Northern Ireland as well. Temperatures once again ranging between 18 and now 24 degrees Celsius. That sunshine will increasingly prevail as we head throughout the rest of this next week, and temperatures widely above average into the mid-20s for many of us. Bye-bye.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What is the state of our economy? What is the state of our National Health Service? What is the state of our schools?
What on earth is going on?
Understanding Britain means understanding the state we are in. This is State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin, Wednesdays, Thursdays and Fridays from 8 p.m. on GB News.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Cambridge University has announced that it will stop ranking its students based on exam results to combat a culture of overwork. One professor has spoken out against the changes, saying that the mental health of students is being used to push through certain agendas. He joins me now. He is Douglas Headley from Clare College, a professor of the philosophy of religion. Hello, Douglas, and welcome to GB News. What is the agenda that you think is being pushed through?
Well, I think it's a fake egalitarianism, really. I think the agonistic aspect of life is a very important part of human existence, and particularly in a university which is supposed to be dedicated to, well, what Aristotle calls a desire to know, and should be committed to excellence. So first of all, I'd say that competition is a perfectly natural part of the human condition, and we can see legitimate forms in, say, Parliament or in law courts. And in the university competition, this agonistic aspect is very important. And secondly, the university is supposed to be about excellence and about encouraging achievement. I would further add that I think the concept of mental health is very problematic. First of all, philosophers worry about what the mental means anyway. It's one of the most puzzling concepts. And secondly, health. I mean, what is health? As the Book of Common Prayer says, there is no health in us. Well, what is meant by health there? Now, clearly, there are serious cases of mental health, but I think many of the problems that are being referred to are unrelated to the university. They're part of a general social condition, and I don't think this is going to help the students at all.
It's also being proposed that classes should only be between 8 in the morning and 8 in the evening and not at weekends. What do you think of that?
Again, terrible. I think this is part of a bureaucratizing of the university. The very idea, I think, of the college, which is in many ways an intriguing, archaic relic of the Middle Ages, is nevertheless intellectually extremely productive, precisely because the students are immersed in a world of intellectual endeavor. So, evening meetings or sometimes weekend meetings can be a very important part of the student experience.
Yeah, I thought supervisions late at night were very great fun. Douglas, do you think you'll be cancelled in Cambridge because of your views?
Well, I hope not.
Well, are your views popular?
Well, I haven't really spoken to many of my colleagues about this, but I have the feeling from a number that I've spoken to that they think that this is completely absurd. And indeed, part of a broader challenge to the idea of the university, which is in a way under threat from both those who see it in purely economic terms and those who are wanting to push this egalitarian agenda. But it seems to me that one of the alarming aspects of this is that given all the access work that has been done recently, the removal of these TRIPOS results will in fact undermine any attempts to show the achievements of those who've come from disadvantaged backgrounds and who have excelled after 3 years.
Well, I have a proposal for you, and that is that you should think about organising the alumni of Cambridge who are thinking of leaving money to Cambridge University and see whether those people aren't less willing to leave their money to Cambridge University if Cambridge University is going to reduce its academic standards. There's just a thought for how you might take the campaign forward. Thank you very much indeed, Professor Douglas Headley. And thank you very much to all my guests for joining me today. It's been a real pleasure to spend the first part of my Sunday with you. This programme will be on at the same time next week, but I will not be back until the 18th of May. I hope that you'll all enjoy the warm, sunny week that's set to come. Now, stay with us because Dawn Neeson is next with The Weekend. Dawn, what is coming up on your show?
Thank you very much, Mr. Portillo. You look amazing, as always. Yes, we have a cracking show for you. A real sizzler, you could say. We've got all the updates from last night's boxing, including how Chris Eubank is doing in hospital at the moment. We've also got seconds out round 2, David Tennant and J.K. Rowling. You don't want to miss any of it coming up. Sizzling show on a sizzling afternoon. Talking of which, let's get the weather.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, a very good afternoon. This is your GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. Warm sunshine is increasingly going to prevail as we head over the next few days. That is all courtesy of high pressure that is gradually building its way in from the south and east, but it's not quite across all areas of the UK just yet. In the short term, we do still have these weather fronts just skirting the far northwest of the UK, so some further outbreaks of rain will be continuing for northwestern areas of Scotland this evening and overnight. Elsewhere, though, it will be staying dry underneath some of these clear skies across England and Wales. There will be some mist and fog patches developing, so it will be quite murky first thing on Monday morning for some of us, and there could be a patchy grass frost where temperatures just drop down to mid or low single figures. We may also just see a little bit of low cloud lingering through the channel as we start off Monday morning, and that could just skirt some southern coastal areas of England first thing. Nevertheless, though, for the bulk of England and Wales, there'll be a good amount of sunshine to greet off the new working week. It is still going to be cloudier first thing across Northern Ireland and parts of Scotland in particular. The rain most persistent for areas of the Highlands, with it